So let us start with the explanation of the story The Enemy. So, before you read, it is the time of the Second World War. An American prisoner of war is washed ashore in a dying state and is found at the doorstep of a Japanese doctor. Should he save him as a doctor or hand him over to the army as a patriot? Note: what is a prisoner of war? Prisoner of war is a person, whether a combatant, means engaged in fighting during a war, or a non-combatant, who is held in custody by a unit, person, or a country in power during or immediately after an armed conflict. Washed ashore means to bring something onto the shore, means the land along the edge of the sea or any other large water body by waves. The story begins in Dr. Sadao. The story begins with Dr. Sadao's mention of childhood and his career. The story is set in Japan during the time of Second World War, a time when Japan was at war with the USA. The story begins with Dr. Sadao Hoki's house, which was built on the coast of Japan. Coast means the part of the land adjoining or near the sea, where he had spent his childhood, and he was living in the same house when the story was told. It was a square stone house built on rocks above the narrow beach. Narrow means small, and outlined by the pine trees that were tilted towards one side, which he had climbed on as a boy barefoot. The story opens with a flashback from Sadao's childhood. In the island of South Seas, it refers to the portion of the Pacific Ocean south of the equator. He had seen man climbing coconut trees. He had learned the trick of climbing by watching this man. His father used to often take Sadao to this island. He always used to say to the brave boy, which means Dr. Sadao, "Those islands yonder, they are the stepping stones to the future for Japan." Now here the word yonder means at some distance in the direction indicated, and the stepping stones means something that helps someone advance or achieve something. So here Sadao's father wanted to tell that those islands of South Seas situated there are beginning of a successful future for Japan. His father's Japanese patriotism and belief in Japan's capacity for greatness is reflected in this statement. Dr. Sadao would question him childishly that where would they reach from those islands? His father had answered, "Who knows? Who can limit our future? It depends on what we make it." His father told him that nobody knows about future, as it does not have any limit. We make our own future. Hence, future depends on our efforts. As a child, he took to heart his father's inspiring words that no one could limit their future. It's all dependent on what they made of it. He always remembered and did what his father had said. Sadao was a dutiful son and obeyed his father. His father was a traditional conservative man who never joked or played with him, but like all fathers, he too struggled and wanted his son to prosper in life and make his own future. Moreover, his father's main concern was Sadao's education. Hence, at the age of 22, Sadao was sent to America for receiving education in surgery and medicine. From the fact that he allowed Sadao to go to America for his education shows his father was willing to be selfish enough for his son to gain degree and prestige from a country he hated, because America was famous for medicines. Dr. Sadao came back to Japan at the age of 30. By the time he returned from America, Sadao became famous as a surgeon as well as a scientist. This had happened while his father was alive. and he was doing a research on rendering the wounds actually clean. These days, lot of antiseptic liquids on particular wound and lot of antiseptic liquids applied on particular wound so that the septic won't spread into the body. But that point of time when the story was written, there was no such advancement, and a lot of people died because of small wounds. So Dr. Sadao was doing a research on rendering the wounds absolutely clean. Dr. Sadao's father inculcated in him the values of patriotism and national loyalty when Sadao was quite young, and he always respected the virtues, the principles given to him by his father. During the World War II, Sadao was not sent to other countries with soldiers as he was perfecting a discovery to render all wounds entirely clean. When the World War II broke out, Sadao had been working on an important medical discovery which would clean the spots of wound completely. And another reason, the old general, army officer of Japan of very high rank, was under medical treatment and was anticipating a surgery for a condition which was being treated with medicine for a time being. Means at any time he might needed an operation, and he trusted no other doctor except Dr. Sadao. Thus, he was not sent abroad along with the troops and kept in Japan. Sadao was required to stay in Japan rather than join the war effort. It also shows the selfish nature of the old general who wanted Dr. Sadao for himself, so he kept Sadao for his service. Next we come to Dr. Sadao and Hana's marriage. Back in the present, the writer described the scene outside Dr. Sadao's house. Clouds were rising from the ocean now. It had been unexpectedly warm for the last few days, and because of this there was dense fog from cold waves of sea. Because of mist, Dr. Sadao could not clearly see the edges of the small island. This island was near the shore. The mist would slowly come up to the beach, and below his house, wreathing means covered all the pine trees at the beach. And in few minutes, slowly the fog would cover his house also. Then he went into the room where Hana, his wife, was waiting for him with the two children. Before Dr. Sadao could go inside, the door opened and his wife looked out for him. She was wearing a dark blue woolen haori over her kimono. Kimono is a long traditional Japanese dress, and haori is a loose outer garment worn over kimono. Then the story again goes to flashback. How did Dr. Sadao and Hana get to marry each other? Sadao reminisced his stay in America. He was thinking that he had such a perfect life, and Hana was such a dutiful wife and a perfect life partner at this point of time. He was thinking of the time when he met Hana for the first time. Sadao had met Hana in America and fallen in love with Hana only after he became completely sure that she was a pure Japanese girl. After he had become sure of her origin and nationality, then only Sadao had fallen in love with Hana, because his father would not have accepted anybody than a pure Japanese girl as his daughter-in-law. This shows that his father was also a conservative racist man and a traditional man who would not have accepted anyone other than a pure Japanese girl. Pure in race means that parents and ancestors of Hana were from Japan. Sadao really respected his father's sentiment. He really respected his father. Dr. Sadao actually met Hana by chance at Professor Harley's house while attending a small get-together which was organized by this kind professor and his wife for his foreign students to make them feel comfortable. Many times Sadao had told Hana that he did not like to go to the house of Professor Harley at night because the rooms were very small and the food, and besides he found the professor's wife very valuable, means talkative. But at the last moment he had changed his decision. He went there and met Hana there at Professor Harley's house, who was a new student. He liked Hana and he wanted to fall in love with her. Dr. Sadao thought how his life would have been different had he not gone to Professor's house that night. He would have missed meeting Hana and finally marrying Hana. Although they were married many years ago and had two children, they still felt the same love and he valued her presence in his life. Because they did not marry in America without thinking, rather they returned to Japan after their education in America and asked their family's approval and his father. And after a proper understanding between each other, they got married. Their marriage was arranged in traditional Japanese way, following all customs and traditional rituals in the presence of his traditional father. Sadao and Hana had talked everything about their marriage before coming to Japan. They were happily married now with two children, and they have a perfect understanding between each other and were happy together. After this, there was no mention of his father, as his father was no more in this world.